Number 2, the Jeranism Effect. This is one of my favorites, one of the most obvious problems with the heliocentric model, which is the lack of constant changes in the equatorial constellations relative to the season. Sure, we see the constellations slowly regress throughout the year, but the point is any equatorial constellation, especially, should be positioned in opposite ends of the hypothetical universe from winter to summer or spring to autumn. Again, this has nothing to do with stellar parallax, but is instead completely related to the angle or direction we are facing towards visible space, which should be a constantly changing variable, facing in opposite directions from winter to summer or autumn to spring, strictly due to the heliocentric layout itself. So this isn't something that I'm making up. This is humoring the heliocentric hypothesis for argument's sake. Okay, so just looking at this admittedly juvenile animation, you can sort of start to see the point where, regardless of how fast the Earth is spinning, in theory, the day side of the Earth is always going to be the side of the Earth facing the sun. And so the stars that are visible space at this point would be down towards the bottom left of the screen. And 6 months later, sort of allowing the Earth to make its long-term alleged orbit around the sun, at this point visible space would be, towards the right-hand side of the screen, and start to superimpose sort of the blue skies that would, come along with the day side of the Earth. It helps to better illustrate the point that visible space should be technically opposite ends of the universe from winter to summer or from spring to autumn. But of course, we can see many of the same stars all year long. And this doesn't make any sense, humoring the heliocentric theory, of course, because visible space would always be aligned to the nighttime side of the Earth, and you simply cannot see the stars during the daytime. Now, furthermore, you can also add the moon into this little animation here to sort of further prove the point that was the topic of section 1 of this series, the phases of the moon. The full moon phase would be when the moon is opposite the sun compared to the Earth, and the no moon phase would be when the moon is aligned to the sun compared to the Earth, in between the two, according to the model. This is a top-down view, obviously, and it's not to scale, of course, but it is to show the point that there should be a different set of stars from winter to summer. It also shows that the crescent moon phases should be strictly aligned to the daytime side of the Earth, and it also shows that the moon should be strictly aligned to the nighttime side of the Earth. And of course, the Jeranism effect involves visible space, so all the constellations are visible from somewhere on Earth all year long, and this debunks the heliocentric model, especially when you're dealing with the equatorial constellations. Now, during one season, visible space should be, say, northwest of the galactic equator. During the next season, as the Earth has made a quarter of an orbit, 3 months of an orbit around the Sun, visible space should be towards the outer edge of the galactic equator. The following season, space should be southeast of the galactic equator, and the final season should find visible space towards the center of the galaxy, and you are a representative of the center of the galaxy in this example. The fact that people can observe all of the constellations from somewhere on Earth from season to season completely falsifies the heliocentric theory, independent of all the other evidence covered so far. Now, in case you're wondering, the simple answer to all these problems with the heliocentric model is the fact that the Earth is the physical stationary plane, and infinite space, as we understand it, doesn't actually exist. Well, in many people's imaginations, it's very real, but the whole Star Wars style universe truly has nothing to do with reality, unfortunately. And finally, number 1, orbital mechanics and gravity. So you probably noticed that I breezed through the Jeranism effect because, well, it is pretty simple. You can check for yourself. However, I've done another video on it where I actually documented constellations and stars from winter using Stellarium. Unfortunately, with Stellarium, you can't screen capture from that for some reason. You end up getting just blank video whenever I've tried to screen capture from Stellarium. But lo and behold, from somewhere on Earth, you can see many of the same stars and constellations, and probably all of the same stars and constellations from somewhere on Earth all year long. And this completely disagrees with the heliocentric theory. And the reason that I went through it kind of quickly is because it really is the crux of the moon argument that was made in section 1. Essentially, or you can tell where the moon is supposed to be related to the Earth and Sun by its phase. And simple things like the full moon well after sunrise into the daytime is impossible alignment in the heliocentric model. Same thing with the crescent moon after, well into the evening after sunset. Similar thing goes with Mercury, which was section 3. And Polaris is a horse of a different color, although you got some similar stuff in there as well. But so far, all 4 of these things, as you've noticed, have been astronomical proofs or disproofs of a heliocentric model. And orbital mechanics is going to be a little bit different. It's still sort of an astronomical thing, but it's more of a physical study, as physics is the study of bodies in motion. So, orbital mechanics is a physical impossibility the way that we're told, especially when dealing with 3rd-generation satellite bodies such as the moon. The moon allegedly orbits the Earth on the more or less aligned to the ecliptic, as we've covered in the first section in quite a bit of detail. But the motion of the moon around the Earth is alleged to be a relatively constant speed. If I remember correctly off the top of my head, it's the moon is allegedly traveling at 2288 miles per hour, so 2,288 miles per hour relative to the Earth. Now, that's all fine and dandy if the Earth were stationary. However, the Earth is not stationary, according to the heliocentric team. They claim that the Earth is orbiting the Sun at 66,600 miles an hour on average, which means that in free space, as the moon orbits around the ecliptic plane and the Earth travels around the ecliptic plane, the moon would necessarily change its velocity in order to maintain a consistent relative speed to that of the Earth, again, which would be 2288. So in other words, as the half moon is west of the Earth, because both the Earth and the moon are allegedly orbiting counterclockwise, and so if the half moon's in the west, in order to get past the Earth, which is traveling east, along the outside of the track, essentially making a larger arc than the Earth, that means the moon would have to accelerate to many times much faster than the Earth in order to go past it at a rate of 2,288 miles an hour until you get the half moon east of the Earth. Then, as the half moon east of the Earth starts to travel, into the no moon phase, so the Earth is going east as the moon is traveling west, it would actually have to decelerate or even retrograde in order to keep its relative speed to the Earth consistent, 2288, until it reaches that, half moon phase west of the Earth, where it would have to do the whole thing over again. Now, the reason that this is impossible is because it is allegedly only gravity that is allowing for this orbital relationship. And Globetards love to argue that this is it's a closed system, everything's moving relative to one another, but this is they don't understand the problem. With the Earth being in motion and the Moon allegedly maintaining a relatively consistent velocity around the Earth in their theory, again, that would mean that the Moon would need to accelerate as it travels east past the Earth from west half moon to east half moon, and then it would need to decelerate or retrograde in order to retain that same 2288 miles per hour as the half moon in the east transitions to back through the no moon phase to the half moon in the west. Right. So that's just one example of how third generation satellite bodies don't work. Now, the other big problem with this is it is claimed that as that half moon going from the no moon position, into the waxing mode to the half moon in the west, where it is just traveled in the opposite direction as the Earth, the gravity of the Earth is allegedly what slingshots the moon around the front of it, and nothing else but gravity. That's allegedly what causes the moon to slingshot around the Earth many times faster than the Earth. However, when the Earth is then traveling at 66,600 miles per hour towards the moon, where is that powerful gravity that was used to slingshot the moon around the Earth? Is it absent? Is it a repelling force? Because it's a, let's see, do the math on it. If the Earth is allegedly traveling at 66600 miles per hour, and it has to go, what, say 238,000 miles, it's about 3.5 hours journey for the Earth to the moon. Of course, it takes the moon half a month to go from a half moon in the west of the Earth to the half moon east of the Earth. It takes it half a month to make that race against the Earth, keeping its relative speed at 2288 to the Earth. On its way back around the inside of the track, as the Earth is traveling in the opposite direction as the moon, along more or less the same plane, that also takes exactly half a month, which is physically impossible. But even before you get to that point, that strong gravity which slingshots the moon round from the west towards the east and gives it that boost of acceleration, that powerful force of gravity should necessarily tug the moon in towards the Earth as the Earth is racing directly towards the moon. We should be on a collision course with the moon every single time that the half moon is east of the Earth or in front of the Earth's trajectory. Plus, you would have the gravitational pull of those two objects. So, and you can argue that the 238,000 miles is a far distance, yet if you're traveling 18.5 miles per second like the Earth is supposedly, or 66600 miles an hour, it is a mere 3.5 hour journey. Simply put, the fact that it takes pretty much exactly the same time for the half moon in the east to travel to become the half moon in the west of the Earth, looking from obviously this top-down sort of view, the fact that duration is identical to the duration of the half moon in the west going into the full moon phases, traversing all the way back to the half moon in the east, those two durations being identical is impossible in the heliocentric model. Again, because during one leg of the journey, the moon is traveling in the opposite direction as the Earth, and during the second leg of the journey, the moon is traveling in the same direction as the Earth, or racing against it. And it is only allegedly the pull of gravity that causes this relationship, and the whole thing falls apart under just the smallest amount of scrutiny. Orbital mechanics don't work. It's a theoretical nonsense. Possibly if there was electromagnetism involved where you've got repulsion, I can see that sort of thing as a possibility, although unfortunately LANCE has their heads shoved so far up the gravity well that they can't see that orbital mechanics is a impossibility. It doesn't work theoretically. The moon would be dead every month. We shouldn't have a moon because, again, gravity is not known to be a repulsive force. It is only known to be an attractive force. And you can argue that the moon is falling around the Earth. However, the Earth is falling around the sun. And that relationship between the Earth and the sun is not reciprocated between the moon and the sun. In other words, there are essentially no magnetic, gravitic effects on the moon from the sun. Otherwise, we'd see some really bizarre things occurring, like, say, as the no moon phase. Every time there's a no moon phase, the moon should get slightly closer to the sun by a great deal, not like an inch a year or whatever they claim. Every single no moon phase, the moon would be aligned to the sun, and if that sun was so powerful to have a gravitic relationship with the moon, then it would necessarily tug on the moon stronger than the Earth, because the Earth is merely in the sun's gravity well. Yet, there is no such effect on the moon from the sun, which is another hole in the heliocentric theory. It doesn't work. And certainly gravity is not a repulsive force, and so I'm very surprised that Team Heliocentric has not made the argument that orbital mechanics is caused by an electromagnetic sort of situation, but the truth is the Earth is measurably, definitely stationary. The Earth is measurably, definitely not spinning or rotating on an axis at over 1,000 miles an hour near the equator. Of course, that would be about half the speed as the hour hand on a clock at the pole. So we're not talking about high RPMs in terms of axial rotation, although we are allegedly talking about a high surface velocity, which, 1,000 miles per hour is well past the speed of sound. And they don't claim that we're traveling along a rectilinear path as we orbit around the center of the axis of the Earth. That would of course be a curvilinear path, and so you would necessarily have acceleration built into that. It would be described as about 130-mile drop every hour, 130 miles squared every hour compared to a tangent line from the base point. Furthermore, as the Earth allegedly orbits the Sun, that curvilinear motion would create acceleration in the form of centrifugal force towards the outside edge of the Earth's orbit. I've made detailed animations and videos regarding orbital mechanics, but the problem with orbital mechanics is quite simple. Again, they are a physical impossibility. They only exist in people's minds in terms of the Sun orbiting this hypothetical galaxy, the Earth orbiting the hypothetical Sun, and the Moon orbiting the hypothetical Earth. None of that is occurring. None of that could possibly occur in reality as they claim it does, due to the problems that I've mentioned. So, just to do a quick recap, in this series we covered the phases of the Moon, which should be indicative of the Moon's position relative to the Earth and Sun according to the heliocentric model. The fact that we can often see the 100% full moon during broad daylight hours after sunrise completely falsifies the heliocentric theory. The same can be said about the crescent moon being visible well into the night, hours after sunset. Again, an impossibility according to the mainstream ball Earth theory. We also covered Polaris, which has remained fixed in the central position relative to all the northern stars down through history, in spite of the well-documented so-called precession of the equinoxes. If the Earth's axis is indeed wobbling once per 26,000 years, we should see a full degree of misalignment from the North Polar axis every 72 years, or even a half a degree of divergence from our axial alignment to Polaris over 36 years, according to the heliocentric theory. The fact that we can see Polaris in the central position from dusk till dawn, from winter to summer, over thousands of years back in history when astronomers were just discovering the precession of the equinoxes, yet we see no change in the centrality of Polaris, which has been documented as such in all of history, throughout history, although, according to this precession of the equinoxes allegedly being caused by axial precession, we should have seen something like a 26-degree misalignment from Polaris to our axis during the 2,000 years since precession of the equinoxes was first discovered. In the third section, we talked about the inner solar system, specifically the planet Mercury, which is often visible fully lit well after sunset, which is a physical impossibility in the heliocentric model for myriad logical reasons. For one thing, when Mercury is fully lit, it should be on the opposite side of the Sun, and when it's at its closest, it should be in like a no Mercury phase. Furthermore, we should never expect a line of sight towards Mercury after sunset, as it should be on the opposite side of the spherical Earth. Furthermore, the planet Mercury is allegedly about 3,000 miles in diameter, which couldn't possibly be visible at a distance of over 40 million miles at its nearest, allegedly. Although, at its nearest, again, that would place Mercury directly aligned to the Sun, according to an observer on Earth, presenting essentially a no Mercury phase at its nearest point. So when Mercury is misaligned to the Sun on either side, according to an observer on Earth, it would be only, maybe a half-lit or like a quarter-lit Mercury, meaning that the angular size and magnitude of the light from Mercury would be diminished. So it wouldn't be representative of a full 3,000 mile diameter object when it's only a quarter lit. And again, we could never get a line of sight towards Mercury after sunset anyways, yet we can often see Mercury, Venus, and even Jupiter aligned in the same image, or nearly aligned in the same frame after sunset. The fact that we can simply see Mercury after sunset completely disagrees with the heliocentric theory. And of course, in this final section, we touched on the Jeranism Effect, which simply means we can see all of the same constellations from somewhere on Earth all year long. Technically, visible space should be opposite ends of the universe from winter to summer, yet we can see many of the same constellations and stars during all seasons from somewhere on Earth. Finally, orbital mechanics is one of the most absurd theoretical fantasies involved with the heliocentric model, especially considering satellite bodies, third-generation satellite bodies such as the Moon, which somehow manages to keep a relatively consistent orbital speed relative to the Earth, even though the Earth is constantly in motion. The fact that the half-moon east of the Earth's trajectory takes about 14 days to travel west of the Earth as the Earth races past the Moon towards the east, yet the Moon also takes about 14 days to race against the Earth and beat out the Earth along the outside of the track due to this magical slingshot of gravity effect, which only appears to occur when the half-moon is west of the Earth's eastward trajectory. As the half-moon is in the east of the Earth, of course, gravity is apparently absent, as the Earth's velocity should put it on a collision course with the Moon every single month when the half-moon is east of the Earth. It should take the Earth less than 4 hours to crash into the Moon during this phase every single month, or maybe even way less than 4 hours, considering this extremely powerful force of gravity, which previously slingshotted the Moon well in front of the Earth 14 days earlier. All in all, for at least 2 years, myself and thousands of people around the world have been trying to find evidence to support the heliocentric model and coming up empty-handed time and time again. I think this is one of the biggest misunderstandings or preconceived notions about flat earthers. People seem to think that we never learned about planets and stars and gravity and the Big Bang Theory and etc. They seem to think that we're stricken by ignorance and confirmation bias resulting from some bizarre psyop or conspiracy theory. In truth, we flat earthers have collectively been trying to find evidence, physical evidence, to support the idea that the Earth is actually a spinning ball flying through infinite space in multiple directions simultaneously. We've been trying to find evidence for actual Earth curvature, even over extremely long distances exceeding 100 miles. There is zero physical evidence to support this theory of Earth curvature. The inverse square curvature necessary to result in an overall sphere doesn't exist. That's measurable, and there is no curvature. So if the Earth has no curvature and it is measurably stationary, then by definition it simply cannot be a spinning ball. And everyone that I've seen attempt to present evidence for a spinning ball Earth is merely parroting what we've all heard a million times about Christopher Columbus and his observations of ships going over the horizon, which is an operation of perspective and refraction, or the Coriolis effect, which has nothing to do with the counter-rotation of the cyclonic forces in either hemisphere. Oh, and by the way, I did a video on Coriolis effect and gravity prove flat Earth, so I'll put a card for that here. Or, you know, pictures from NASA. The more that one inspects NASA and their footage, the more forgery and fakery we find, complete with air bubbles in space during official spacewalks, green screen or chroma key technology, harnesses, CGI, and a combination of these things, along with a nearly unlimited budget used strictly for propaganda in order to trick people into thinking that astronauts are up there in space. Now, the powers that be have a lot riding on the great deception of the spherical Earth, which seems to have taken root about 500 years ago, but really kicked in during the middle of the 20th century after the US Navy took an adventure to the Antarctic, which we all know was dubbed Operation High Jump. Now, at that point, I believe the government realized for 100% certain, so if there was any question in their mind prior to Operation High Jump, at that point, they were 100% certain that the Earth is definitely not a sphere, and they possibly found evidence for more land beyond the South Polar region, or at least south of Little America, as they called it. Now, instead of a corporate and governmental ventures and huge migrations of corporate interests into the Antarctic for extracting resources, which would be what you would expect after Operation High Jump, you would have expected them to start digging up coal and oil and gold and platinum and uranium and all, you know, everything that you can possibly think of in an untouched continent. Instead, we got the Antarctic Treaty, which essentially prohibited corporate activity and government activity in the far south. And we got things like, instead, Lost in Space, Star Wars, Star Trek, well, Star Wars was later, but Star Trek, and of course NASA. The Antarctic Treaty again prevented corporate activity in the South Polar region, and this treaty has lasted over 50 years through all sorts of financial, energy crises, and in terms of Lost in Space, Star Trek, and other sci-fi programs, those were probably CIA-funded psychological operations utilized to captivate the public's imagination with the prospect of space travel. Now, by the time NASA allegedly traveled to the moon, the world population, and especially the United States population, was primed and ready for the deception, and NASA pulled off the impossible by simply faking it. So instead of focusing our collective efforts on exploring the true frontier, which is parallel to the ground in any direction south, the governmental propaganda machines ensured that our collective focus was on the Freemasonic astronauts pretending to be in space. So wrapping this up, I just want to give a big thanks and shout out to those of you who have pledged through Patreon. So far, I think I've got about a dozen people to pledge through Patreon, so thank you guys so much for that. Also, thanks so much to you guys that contribute and support the channel through PayPal. I honestly couldn't do this without you guys, and your support and your encouragement really means a lot to me, so thank you so much for that. So if you want to join and become a patron, go to www.patreon.com/themorguile. I'll put a link here. And as always, you can support through PayPal to the direct link www.paypal.me/themorguile1, or a standard PayPal transfer to jonELANCE@gmail.com through PayPal. With that being said, God bless you all. Thanks so much for watching. Spread the word, spread the world, and peace.